Hi everyone, Stephanie here. I'm so excited to share with you today's masterclass, 3 secrets to raising more money for your nonprofit without yet another fundraising gala, without hopping on a plane to visit another donor. I'm going to share today 3 secrets to raising more money for your organization. So I just wanted to pop in and say hi. I am going to make my video a little bit smaller here, and we're going to dive right in. So first of all, welcome. I am so glad you're here. In order for you really to get the most out of this masterclass today, I want you to take this time for yourself, for your own professional development. So turn off everything you have going on in the background, silence your phone, turn off notifications, and really, take this time to invest in yourself and in your organization. We'll be together today for about an hour. I've got some really awesome content coming at you, and then I'm going to share about a program that I have that can help you take this masterclass to the next level. So I'm, like I said, super glad you're here. You might be wondering, how in the world do I raise more money for my organization without another time-consuming gala? We all know that those events are so fun, but such a huge time suck. You might be wondering if your financials are strong enough to share with your donors or your other stakeholders. And you might also be wondering how to increase donor engagement and financial sustainability at your organization. So today's masterclass, we're going to talk about 3 secrets to raising more money for your nonprofit without another time-consuming fundraising strategy, so that you can have a greater impact on those you serve, which I think is the purpose of all that we're doing, and all that really we want to achieve in our organizations. So you might be wondering, who is Stephanie? So I'm a CFO. I've been working with nonprofit organizations for over a decade on the ground, literally around the world. I am the founder and CEO of 100 Degrees Consulting, which serves purpose-driven leaders and helps organizations really better understand, use, and communicate your financials. Here is me with the very first nonprofit organization I worked at in Afghanistan, where we helped farmers really rebuild their farm businesses. Here's me again in Nepal with another organization where I was eventually the CFO. And during this time, I also got my master's in nonprofit administration and finance from NYU. And so really sort of backed up my on-the-ground experience with education as well. And I know what it's like to really feel outside of your comfort zone when it comes to numbers. So this is me after running my very first marathon, the Boston Marathon. I had done some fundraising for a nonprofit organization, ran the Boston Marathon, and it was so far outside of my comfort zone. It was a huge, huge physical feat, which if anybody has done any running, you certainly know that as well. And so if numbers are outside of your comfort zone, I get it. I've been there in many ways myself. So why you're here today? So maybe you stumbled into your role at a nonprofit. You have no experience with fundraising or with the financials, and you kind of feel like a fraud. You feel a little bit like, why am I in this role? Maybe you wonder how you're ever going to apply for grants to accomplish these big, big programmatic goals that you've set when you can't really even explain your income statement or your balance sheet or your budget. You know what it's like to be far outside of your comfort zone when it comes to numbers, and you honestly don't know. You cannot say with certainty if your organization is financially sustainable, if you're going to be here for the long haul. So we're going to tackle all of this and more today. So during this masterclass, over the next hour or so, we're going to talk about how to increase donor engagement through transparency, right? Maybe you've heard this before, maybe you haven't, but I'm going to share a couple of secrets there. We're going to discover the 5 essential financial reports that you must know and use to increase your transparency and tell a better story about your organization. You're also going to learn the 3 key metrics that donors are really interested in. So you can use these key metrics in any of your donor communication, and it's really going to help make that story that you're telling about your organization much more robust. So my goal today is to help nonprofit leaders just like you. I want to help you raise more money, first of all, increase your donor engagement, because that will also help raise more money. I want you to feel more confident in your own leadership ability. I want you to understand, communicate, and use the financials. And then, of course, our ultimate goal is to make a greater impact on those you serve. So whoever it is in your community that you're serving, we want to have a greater impact there. So we're diving right into secret number one. Donor engagement is increased through transparency. So you might be thinking, well, we really shouldn't or don't want to share too much financial information. People can just find our 990 on GuideStar if they really want to know more. Maybe donors don't really care all that much about our financial health, and sharing too much could possibly get us in trouble. Maybe if we're talking about sharing the numbers with staff, they won't understand the financials, or even maybe our donors or our board won't understand the financials, so why bother sharing anything? And you might be thinking, well, there's no way that being more transparent about our numbers is going to work for me because our donors don't understand accounting terms or nonprofit financial reports. Your board really only cares about the programs, not the numbers. You don't really know what to share with the staff, and you don't feel confident in explaining any of this if people do have questions. So here's the truth. Telling your financial story to stakeholders will build and grow trust, relationships, and contributions. It's a proven fact, and I'm going to tell you how it's proven. So transparency really creates a deeper sense of ownership within the organization, and therefore a greater sense of engagement. And recently, GuideStar published an academic study that was done on 15,000 nonprofit organizations that showed that transparent organizations received 53% more in contributions the following year after they became transparent. So if we're more transparent about our financials and about our organization overall, we are more likely to receive more contributions. And that is what we are all in this for, right? So that we can have a greater impact. And finally, being more transparent will also help improve our donor relationships because we're building this trust with our donors. It's going to help retain ongoing support from them. So it does not have to be complicated, okay? We're not talking about anything super complicated. I'm going to show you today how simple storytelling with financials can be. So with our internal stakeholders, maybe our board or our staff, we can really just share with them financial statements. Or if the financial statements, might be too complicated for our staff, we can create a dashboard with some relevant talking points that really sort of highlight the pieces of the financials that are most relevant and interesting to them. When we're talking about our external stakeholders, we're talking about our donors, our volunteers, the general public. And obviously we have our Form 990, we have our audited financials. Those are kind of, staples of financial management that most organizations have. That we don't have a whole lot of control over what they look like, but our annual report, for example, or maybe our email newsletters, those are opportunities to share some of these metrics that I'm going to talk about today and really make that story about your organization more robust and become more transparent with your audience. So I want to share today about how one of my clients really massively increased their staff engagement, which is a little bit interesting. We're talking about donor engagement, but I think it's really important, especially if you have a relatively large staff, to figure out how to sort of retain them and make sure that they are happy in the organization as well. And so this organization, they started sharing their financials with their staff, their monthly financial dashboard, and it was just, again, not the full balance sheet and income statement because that might be overwhelming for some people, but really this high-level dashboard which gave a great snapshot view of the organization. So they started sharing that during staff meetings, and they also implemented a participatory budgeting process that included all the staff. So everyone down to from the program coordinators all the way up to the C-suite, everybody had a little piece of the process when it came time to develop their budget. So as a result, staff felt way more ownership around the financials. They understood how their small budget played into the big picture, so they respected budget limitations. They understood how hard it is to raise every single dollar at the organization, and so they were much more conscious of the way that they were spending and were able to come up with some creative ways to manage their budget and really help save money. And overall, staff engagement increased 30% during this process, and that was taken by a staff survey that was done. So by sharing more about their numbers, they were overall able to increase staff engagement. So how do you share? Take a minute to just think about how you share your financials right now. Are you sharing financials with your staff? How so? What about your board? Are you giving them your financial statements, your income statement, your balance sheet, maybe a budget versus actual? Are you taking that a step further and really helping them to understand those financials at a higher level? What about your donors? Are you sharing your audited financials with them? Are you sharing your 990? Are you using your audit as an opportunity to talk about your financial health? I know this one great organization that when they would get their audited financials back, instead of just quietly posting them on their website, they would send an email and share their audited financials with their entire audience and talk about how proud they were to be a financially healthy and financially sustainable organization that had a clean audit. And so again, we think of these things as sort of required parts of, administering a nonprofit. But it's important to think of them as opportunities to increase transparency and engagement with your audience. So let's move on to secret number 2. So there are 5 essential financial reports that you must know and use, just 5. And you're probably already looking at least 3 of these on a regular basis. So let's dive right in. So a lot of people think all you need is an income statement. You just want to see revenue and expenses. Nothing else is really all that important. Income statement is fine. And you might be thinking, okay, 5 financial reports. Well, it's a bit of a headache to even pull the 1 or the 2 that I look at right now. My bookkeeper's not going to want to do a whole lot more work, or I don't know where to find those reports myself. Maybe you don't know how to analyze the reports, so you feel like, well, what's the point if I'm going to pull these reports, but they mean nothing to me? So we're going to tackle that in just a second. Maybe 5 reports feels like too much work from overburdened ED and your team. I guarantee you it's not. I'll show you how simple this can be. Or maybe you think your donors, your board, your staff, your stakeholders don't care about all this financial information, and you might be right. They might not. But what we're going to do, and what makes us a little bit different than maybe something you've seen elsewhere, is that we're going to extract really useful, tangible pieces of information from these financial reports. So you're not overwhelming, you're not overburdening people, we're just sharing some really interesting facts about your financial health. So I want to share with you how one of my clients really revamped their reports and avoided a major cash crunch. So this client was only looking at a budget versus actual report. And honestly, I do a lot of similar webinars to this. And when I survey the attendees of the webinars, pretty much everybody's doing a budget versus actual. Nobody's really doing some of these other reports that we're talking about. So in a budget versus actual, there's no comparative data or analysis. So we can't compare to last year, for example, or last month even. There's no balance sheet, so we have no idea what cash is looking like, and there's no cash flow forecast. So again, we don't know how much cash is in the bank or how long we've got until we run out of cash. So then they started implementing our 5 essential financial reports, and by especially using our cash flow forecasting tool, they were able to map out their future cash flow, uncover a future cash crunch. They were literally able to see into the future and avoid it by adjusting timing of expenses and just requesting an advance on some donor funds. So basically, instead of running out of money 3 months from now, they were able to avoid that, take some very quick, easy actions to make sure that they had enough cash in the bank to continue operating. So here we go, essential reports 1 and 2. So on the left here, you see an income statement. You all know what an income statement looks like. Revenue on the top, expenses on the bottom, and net income on the very, very bottom, which is revenue minus expenses. But the different piece here, and one thing you might not be doing, is including comparative data. So I've got this big red circle around the top that you can see we're comparing Q4 2017 to Q4 2016, and then including variance percentages. And this part is key. This is what most people don't do. Most people, if I ask for an income statement, I'll get just this first column here, just the current period data. But I have no idea if those numbers are good, are bad, are high, or low without any point of comparison. So in this case, we can see that in Q4 2017, this organization raised about $73,000. However, the year before, same period, they raised $129,000. So we're 43% lower than last year. This might, beg me to ask the question, why? What happened? What's the difference between Q4 this year and Q4 last year? So that's essential report number 1, a comparative income statement. Essential report number 2 is a comparative balance sheet. So you see here on the right is a balance sheet. Again, just basic structure, assets at the top, liabilities and equity at the bottom. And again, what I have done is I have circled the period so you can see that we have included comparative data. Again, most organizations are not doing this. They are showing their just the current period in a vacuum. So we have no idea when I see this bank balance of $70,000, is that good? Is that bad? It seems low, but maybe it's actually high. We have no point of comparison without this data in here. So that's why I love this. We can see, okay, our bank balance from March 31st, 2018 compared to the prior quarter, December 31st, 2017, it looks like our bank balance increased by 16%. That's great, okay? So that's really important to have the comparative data on both of these reports. Okay, essential report number 3, budget versus actual. Now, like I said, almost all organizations that I survey, that I talk to, that attend these webinars that I present, pretty much everyone is running a budget versus actual report. This measures our performance, which is our actuals, against our plan, which is our budget. So we're keeping track of our budget pretty well. So in this case, you can see it's just sort of set up actuals, budget, and then we've got some variances here too, so percentage of budget. So one thing I like to look at on here is this is looking at percentage of budget. So in this case, it looks like for personnel, we've actually gone over budget. We spent 104% of our budget. So I would like to ask the question, what's going on? Why are we over budget? Okay, essential report number 4. This is your statement of functional expenses. So this is also could be called an income statement by class or an income statement by program. It measures, we can look at a couple things on here, but basically the structure is that we're taking your revenue and expenses and splitting them up by programs, admin, and fundraising. So we have a statement of functional expenses on the 990. That's one of the key reports on the 990. It's also going to be in your audited financials. So it's very important that your accounting system is structured and set up in a way that you can track this by programs, fundraising, and admin. So we don't want to have to be sort of manually doing the work later. So we want to make sure the accounting system is set up for this. So a couple things that we can do on here is just look at our total program expenses as a percentage of total. So in this case, 76% of our expenses are spent on programs. There's a lot of, conversation and benchmarks on how we should not even be looking at these percentages. But I think the fact is that Charity Navigator and the Better Business Bureau use these numbers to rate nonprofit organizations. So as much as we think that we shouldn't be focusing on this because we need to be making investments into our organizations to help them to grow, and so that might skew the admin ratio. It's an important thing to know because the rating agencies are still using these numbers to rate nonprofits. Okay, essential report number 5. Now this one might throw you a little bit for a loop because this is not a report that you can find in the accounting system. So this is the one that most organizations are not doing. So what we have here is a cash flow template. It's in Excel. It's entirely in Excel. And we use it to track both actuals, so looking back at history, what has already happened, and future. So in this case, we fill in for, if we're 6 months out of the year, we're filling in what has come in every single month, and then what's going out every single month. And then we have sort of an ending balance per month that rolls into the beginning balance of the next month. And so we fill in our actuals for the months that have already happened. And then what makes this report different is that we fill in the projections for the months that have not yet happened. And so that's where, like I mentioned, my client earlier was able to see, once they filled in the projections of where they, how much cash they thought would be coming in over the next several months and how much cash they thought would be going out over the next several months, they could see where their bank balance really dipped the lowest. And one thing we've got built into this template, this is a template that we created, is your months of cash on hand. So if we know our monthly burn rate, which we'll talk about in a second, if you know about on average how much you spend per month, this little line right here at the bottom on line 26 will show you, if not another dollar were to come into your organization, how long could you operate? And so anything under 3 we've got in red, and anything over 3 we've got in green, because really the goal is to have 3 to 6 months of operating expenses in the bank at all times. So you can see in June, our ending balance of $955,000, we've got about 5 months of operating expenses in the bank, which is great. So again, this report is super, super critical, but virtually no organizations are doing this. So you will put yourself a step ahead in understanding this months of cash on hand metric if you use a report like this. So take a step back, think for a second about the 5 reports that we just talked about, the 5 essential financial reports. We talked about a comparative income statement, a comparative balance sheet. We talked about a budget versus actual, a statement of functional expenses, and then this cash flow report. Which of these 5 essential financial reports do you use right now? Which of these does your organization use? If the answer is just budget versus actual, you got a little work to do, but it's not hard. It's not hard to pull any of those reports from the accounting system that you have right now. Okay, so secret number 3 that I promised, donors are most interested in 3 key metrics. So a lot of people think like, okay, in order to actually analyze the financial statements, you have to be an accountant, you need a finance degree, you need to just love math and numbers. And I think that's really not true. You might be thinking there's no way that you can do this because you don't know when and how to calculate the metrics. Fair enough, I'm going to show you. Maybe you're not sure if your accountant or your bookkeeper can actually pull the right reports for you. Maybe you really, 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 really hate math and hate numbers, or maybe you feel like your audience, your donors, are really actually just not going to care about these metrics. Well, that's not true. That GuideStar study showed us that donors do care about some of these metrics, and that GuideStar study actually highlighted a few of these metrics as well. So the first one, how to analyze your financials even if you hate math, looking at revenue diversity. So revenue diversity is just how much revenue is earned from each revenue source. And this one is really interesting because I've seen a lot of organizations rely very strongly, very heavily on one grant, maybe one government grant that funds 90% of their programs. That is a slightly risky situation, if the political climate changes or if the government agency changes, that might put a pretty big risk on your programs. This example, which is just a chart made in Excel, shows a pretty diverse revenue base here. So the second metric that is really interesting for donors is your operating margin or your profitability. And I put profitability in quotes because, as you know, nonprofits, our sole purpose is not to create a profit. Yes, we can have a profit and use that to invest back into the organization. And frankly, I think that's quite healthy for organizations to budget for a profit and use that surplus as a reserve or for investments. So I think that's a really key part of nonprofit financial sustainability. But donors, also Charity Navigator, Better Business Bureau, like to look at your operating margin. And basically all that is your net at the bottom. It's your net income. So it's your revenue, which is left over after expenses. So in this case, I just grabbed the same example of the income statement, and you can see for this quarter, this particular quarter that we're looking at here, this organization actually had a deficit or a negative operating margin. It looks like in the previous quarter it was positive, which is great. But I think what's important is to kind of look at this on a whole, look at this on an annual basis. But your operating margin is something that is really interesting for donors to see. The next metric that donors, again, like to see, as well as these rating agencies, is your program admin and fundraising ratios. So what percentage of your expenses are dedicated to each of these three categories. And so this is just, I've just sort of visualized this in a different way. And you can see here the green is programs, the blue is fundraising, and the red is admin. And it looks like here in 2017, we spent a greater percentage of our expenses on admin. And maybe it's because we invested in new computers for the whole staff that were using, 12-year-old computers before this. Or maybe we had to, get a new accounting software because we had grown to a certain level. So there's usually, there's always a good reason for it, for sure. But it's really important to know what these percentages are. And the next one, oh, I love this one. I think this is my favorite. I already did mention this, but our months of cash on hand. So first, we need to know our monthly burn rate. And so our monthly burn rate is just our average monthly expenses. So if we take our actuals for the year and say we're 9 months into the year, take our actual expenses for those 9 months, divided by 9, we have our average monthly expenses. And so then we can take our total cash balance divided by our monthly burn rate, or those average monthly expenses, and see how many months of cash we have on hand. And you'll see in this case, we've got this organization's cash flow forecast kind of broken out by actuals for the first 9 months and projections. And you'll see that in September, they actually have less than 1 month of cash on hand. So that's a little bit of a risky situation. But what we can see by, again, looking into the future is that it looks like they have some big months of cash coming in over the next quarter. And so by the end of the year, they're built back up to 9 months of cash on hand. So this one is really important to know, especially looking into the future, because a lot of nonprofit organizations I know are very, very cash tight. So by using this, you'll be able to see and avoid any future cash crunches. And again, calculating that months of cash on hand. So we have a metrics calculator. We have created a metrics calculator that does the math for you. So all of these metrics I talked about, and there's even several more in there, don't require you to do any math whatsoever. The second sort of little nugget of truth is that knowing and sharing these numbers are going to increase donor engagement. The GuideStar study told us that when you are sharing more of this information, it will increase donor engagement. And then finally, that GuideStar study, like I said, it also shared some of these metrics that donors are most interested in, so you really know where to focus your time and energy when it comes to looking at your numbers. So right now, I would love to know, take a step back, pause, digest a second. Do you calculate and track any metrics for your organization? Which ones? There's a lot more than what I just showed you today. This is just a quick snapshot, but I wanted you to sort of get a taste of really how easy it is to calculate some of these numbers and how useful they can be, both to your own internal management, but also to demonstrating your financial health to your audience, to your stakeholders. Okay, so we have reached a point in the presentation where I just want to pause and ask you how it's going. So in the last 30 minutes or so, we have figured out how to increase donor engagement, and that's through transparency. And through transparency specifically around your numbers, we have discovered the 5 essential financial reports that you must know and be using on a regular basis. And we learned 3 key metrics that donors are really, really interested in. So, like I said in the beginning, I wanted to share with you, after we got through all of that super content, I wanted to share with you something to really help you take things to the next level. So I want to introduce Master Your Nonprofit Numbers. This is an online course in financial management specifically for nonprofit leaders. So I created this course using my over a decade of nonprofit CFO knowledge and experience and on the ground working in the field nitty-gritty work. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about what's inside and hopefully how it can help you and your leadership and your organization. So within the course, there are 6 main modules, and the modules are budgeting, cash flow, financial reporting, audit, 990s and compliance, and then strategic planning. And in my experience, these are really the elements that are going to help you up-level your organization's financial management and overall your own leadership by really knowing and feeling solid in each of these 6 items. So when we talk about budgeting, we're talking about creating your financial roadmap, right? A lot of people sort of shy away from that word budget because it feels very limiting and very scarcity driven, but really your budget is your financial roadmap. And so within this module, you get a presentation just like this one where I'm explaining to you the strategy and the process for creating a budget that you're actually going to use as a management tool at your organization. There's a couple really great downloadable tools for you, like a PDF budget checklist and a budget template that you can use and do, customize and do whatever you need to for your own organization. So if you don't have a great template already, this one is going to help you for sure. So the second module is cash flow. I mentioned cash flow a couple times in this presentation because, like I said, it's one of the weakest areas, I would say, or has the greatest area of opportunity for nonprofit organizations to really gain insight and control over their cash. So again, in this module, you'll get my presentation where I explain the whole strategy and process behind using that template that I've showed you a couple screenshots of. And you're also going to get the downloadable Excel version of that cash flow template with a step-by-step walkthrough on exactly how to use it so that you too can see into that crystal ball of the future and make sure that you are very cash strong as an organization. The third module is financial reporting. So we're going to take everything that we did today and take it to the next level to really help you make smarter decisions based on some new insights that you're finding within these financials. So you're going to get some sample financial statements so you can see the format that I use with my clients to really gain the most insight. And you're going to get a presentation, again, similar to this one, that explains the process, that explains all of the reports, and goes into even more analytics around these financial reports. There's also a super fun pop quiz in there if you're like an A+ student. So the fourth module is around audit. So especially for new executive directors or CEOs that have never gone through it, or maybe if you had a bad experience with an audit, the audit is a bit of a terrifying time of year for a lot of nonprofit leaders. And I get it, I've been there. I've been through messy audits before, but I've also been through really clean, really simple audits. So in this module, you're going to get a preparation checklist that if you're starting to think about an audit, or maybe you just want to get ready for this year, you can kind of start going through this list, making sure you've got everything together. There's an ebook that was created. I wrote it especially for nonprofit leaders, especially if you've never gone through an audit before. So it kind of tells you everything to expect. There's a whole presentation that, again, walks you through the ins and outs and how to make sure you have a super clean audit. And there's some bonus resources. So I also included some really solid links that I found from around the web from some trusted sources that I really trust and use as some extra resources in there for you. So the fifth module is around 990s and compliance, making sure that your organization is fully compliant in all the things. So first of all, there's a presentation to really explain the 990 and compliance basics and some secrets that you might not know. So I love the 990 personally, and I know you probably think I'm crazy for that, but there are some really great opportunities to increase your transparency and talk up your organization within the 990 that most organizations are not taking advantage of. So I spill all the secrets in there. And there's also a downloadable PDF compliance checklist to make sure that you're doing all the right things at the right time and meeting all of your deadlines. And finally, the sixth module is around strategic planning. So a lot of organizations I know maybe go through a lot of times very expensive strategic planning process with a consultant, and a few weeks, a few months after that strategic plan is done, we print it all nicely in binders, and then it gets filed away, never to be seen again until we hire the next consultant to come in and do the next round of strategic planning. So this type of strategic plan really helps keep your plan alive so that you can achieve your goals. So there's a presentation again to explain the strategy and the process, because it's a little different, I think, than what you may have seen in other organizations. There's also a downloadable PDF strategic plan template, and really helps you walk through how to align your strategic plan and your budget so that your goals have resources backing them so that you can actually achieve those goals. Whew, okay, that was a lot. So within the course, you get immediate access to all of the templates, checklists, downloads, everything that I just mentioned. You get it immediately. As soon as you click purchase, done. There's also a private Facebook group to connect, learn, and ask questions. It's an opportunity to network with other nonprofit leaders, and you'll be welcomed into that group as soon as you purchase the course. And then, of course, you have lifetime access to the course. So anytime we go through an update or an upgrade, you get access to all of it, and you'll never be kicked out, basically. So we've had a number of students go through this course and had really, really great results. And you can head on over to our the actual page at the link below, and you can see all of the testimonials. But this one I really, really loved. I wish I had this course from day one. Every nonprofit executive, no matter their experience, will benefit from this program. Stephanie's courses provided great and meaningful exercises, tips, opportunities for reflection of how every leader can be more proactive about cash flow, auditing, budgeting, and so much more. So this person from this organization really took advantage of the course and started implementing things immediately, which I loved. This one I think was great. The most useful thing for me was the templates for the different reports. I have since used the cash flow statement to keep the board up to date, and will definitely use the calendar and template for projecting next year's budget. So again, we designed the course to kind of go through sequentially, but if you're like, okay, it's strategic planning time and I'm desperate for this template, you've got access to it immediately, so you can go in and download whatever you need. So a lot of leaders, you might be one of them, feel really held back by your numbers. You don't feel like you have a strong sense of financial analysis. Maybe you don't have a finance background. Maybe you don't even like numbers. You've been telling yourself this story that you're bad with math, you're bad with numbers. This is going to work for you. So this also works for executive directors who are laying awake at night, worried about the bank balance, but really not sure how to avoid that cash crunch. I can't tell you how many leaders I have talked to that are worried about cash. And how are we making an impact on the communities that we're serving if we're sitting here worried if we're going to make payroll, right? We need our focus to be elsewhere on the programs. This course is for CEOs who want to raise more money, but you're not sure if your financials are good enough to show to a funder. You're going to make sure your financials are super, super strong, crisp, concise, very clear, and you know how to answer any questions that they might have in this course. And finally, any nonprofit leader who really wants to make a greater impact on the community that you're serving. And so this is going to help you up-level your financial management and thus be able to make a greater impact. So again, just to reiterate, there are 6 main modules within this course that you're going to get immediately. So we added up the total value of all of these courses. If you were to just do one-on-one work with us and get all of this stuff, it's valued at over $8,000 truly. Obviously, we're not going to charge you that much. I really appreciate you spending your time on the masterclass today and making it through this far with me. So, want to offer you the course for $197 today. This is like massive, massive value, truly, and a really, really low price point that I really wanted to make it accessible and attainable for all nonprofit leaders. And so that's why we have set the price point at $197. So this is pretty amazing. I will say it myself. And we've gotten that feedback from a lot of other nonprofit leaders as well, that this is a pretty awesome deal. So there are a couple free bonuses that are built into this course if you buy quickly. So there's a couple one-on-one coaching calls with me within 8 weeks of the course enrollment. So within 8 weeks of the day you sign up, you'll get 2 one-on-one coaching calls with a nonprofit CFO. So if you've got specific questions on maybe some of the modules that you're going through, or maybe something you've got going on at your organization, you can have the opportunity to sort of talk them out, flesh them out with a nonprofit CFO. And after that, there are 5 other sort of mini modules within the course that you're going to get as well. So I've got my secret tools to managing your numbers and simplifying your organization, where I talk about the tools that I use both to run my business and that I help nonprofit leaders use to really simplify their organization, cost effective, but we're really going to help streamline and create efficiencies. We have another masterclass to help you manage your restricted funding like a CPA. This is a hot topic, making sure that we are tracking and reporting on donor restricted funds accurately. So this is going to really help you take that process to the next level. There's a quick video training on your finance team, really knowing when and who to hire. It's really important to understand the difference between, a bookkeeper and a CFO and a CPA and a certified financial planner. So this video breaks it all down for you. How to build your nonprofit marketing plan. There's a masterclass and a workbook. I've teamed up with one of my favorite nonprofit marketing professionals to help you figure out how to add marketing into your budget and what you need and how to get started. And finally, I teamed up with an expert grant writer, a PhD, who's just awesome in her field, and she does a little mini training on grant writing made easy. So again, when we added up the value of all these bonuses, it's over $3,000. So this is just extra stuff you're going to get that's included in the course. So a little more detail, 2 one-on-one coaching calls, which I mentioned. Oh, I kind of already went through these. Sorry about that. My secret tools. So I've got, tools to really create efficiencies and make your life easier. Included in the Master Your Restricted Funding like a CPA, there's some checklists, there's some tools that walk you through exactly how to keep track of your restricted funds. Like I said, a quick video of me talking about knowing when and who to hire. Building your nonprofit marketing plan masterclass with my friend Jessie Robinson. Figuring out the sort of mystery of grant writing, and Krista Kurlinkis, one of my good friends, also helps make this really, really easy for you. So to summarize it all, to recap, we've got these 6 big modules: budgeting, cash flow, financial reporting, audit, 990s, and strategic planning, valued at $8,000. We've got these other 6 bonuses, the 2 one-on-one coaching calls, as well as 5 different sort of mini modules, valued at over $3,000. You add it all together, we're looking at almost $12,000 in financial management support for your organization. $12,000. Like I said, we are not going anywhere near $12,000. We're making this super accessible for nonprofits at $197. So if you are ready, the button below is there for you. Join Master Your Nonprofit Numbers for $197 today. Everything we just talked about, it's all included, and it's all included immediately. So once you log in, once you sign up, it's all right there for you, ready to go at your leisure. We also do have a money back guarantee. So within 30 days of purchasing the course, if you hate it, if you don't like it, if you're unsatisfied, I want to see that you've done the work, of course, like go through the course, do the whole thing, do the work, and I will give you a full refund if you decided that there is no value there. I don't think that's going to happen, but we just want to let you know that there's absolutely no risk to you to join the course today. So if you need any help, if you have any questions, you can email me directly. I email Stephanie at 100degreesconsulting.com. We'll make sure to help you out. And if you are wondering if this is right for you, shoot me a note. Tell me about your organization. Tell me about where you are in the process, how big your organization is, or maybe what you feel like some of your challenges are, and we'll help you figure out if this is right for you or not. Stephanie at 100degreesconsulting.com. Okay, so maybe you have made it this far in the webinar, and for that, I thank you. I'm so glad you're still with me today on this masterclass, and maybe you're thinking you cannot afford this right now. It's only $197, but you can't afford it. So I know nonprofit budgets. I know how tight they are. If we break this down by quarter, it's like $50, right? This is really not, this is not a super expensive investment for your organization. But I think that the more important thing to think about is how much is it going to cost your organization to do nothing? What missed funding opportunities will there be? What are you going to miss out on because you're not confident in sharing your financial statements? Or what about, if we're not increasing our donor engagement, what donors are going to walk away because we're not transparent, because we are not trying to build that trust with them? Maybe you feel like you don't have time to take the course. Totally understand. You are a very busy nonprofit leader like every other nonprofit leader I know, but the great thing about this is it's completely self-paced and you have lifetime access. So if you want to binge and do this, just set aside an entire day and try and go through the whole thing, that's great. If you want to spread it out over the course of 8 or 10 or 12 weeks and just do an hour a week, that is great too. And this is an investment. I think we have to think of it that way as well. This is an investment in your own professional development, and it's an investment into your organization. So it is worth the time. This is not a time waster. This is not scrolling Instagram or Facebook. This is professional development. So just to recap one more time, we have our 6 main big beefy modules within the course. We've got our 2 one-on-one coaching calls, and then we have 5 little mini modules within the course as well. And again, this is a huge value. There was a lot of time and energy and effort put into this course from my over decade of experience and collaboration with other nonprofit leaders as well. So huge value here that we are offering for $197. So click the button below if you want to join Master Your Nonprofit Numbers. I would just love to have you in there. I think it's a great opportunity for nonprofit leaders like you to really up-level your financial management at your organization, increase donor engagement, and increase contributions, taking it all the way back to the beginning where we started today. So thank you so much for your time. Thanks for sticking with me for nearly an hour here. I hope you got a lot of value from the first half of this masterclass, and hopefully you are going to join us in Master Your Nonprofit Numbers. So I will see you in there.